understanding our car a little bit better, try to be closer to the front. We cannot fight with those cars.
Guys, let's be honest for a second. Max Verstappen had a choice. Mercedes came knocking, but Max looked at all of that, looked at Red Bull, and said, no, this is my family, I am staying. And now, in 2026, that decision is haunting him every single weekend. P11 in qualifying at Suzuka, the car falling apart race after race, a week so bad that even his most loyal fans do not know what to say anymore. The team he rejected is now sitting on pole position at the very circuit he used to own. So today we're going to talk about exactly how deep this goes, because this is not just a bad qualifying session. This is the consequence of one decision that is now defining Max Verstappen's entire 2026 season.
The collapse from within. But honestly, you cannot put all of this on Max, because the real story here is what Red Bull did to themselves. Think about this. Red Bull decided to build their own engine from scratch for 2026, something they had zero experience doing. And the result is a car that simply cannot compete at the front. On top of that, they promised Max a championship-winning machine, and they could not deliver. But the decision that truly hurt them the most? Firing Christian Horner, the man who built Red Bull Racing from nothing, who delivered 8 world championships in 20 years, just gone mid-season. And right now, watching Red Bull struggle week after week, it is becoming painfully clear that losing Horner was not the fresh start they hoped for. It was the beginning of the collapse. And the real question nobody is asking, if Christian Horner was still in that garage, would any of this even be happening? Red Bull's nightmare season. Here's the thing though, if you've been following this 2026 season even a little bit, you already know that Red Bull is not the same team from those championship years. In Australia, they were miles behind Mercedes and Ferrari. Then in China, it got even worse. They were literally fighting midfield teams like Alpine and Racing Bulls just to score points. Their own team boss, Laurent Mekies, came out and admitted they had significant shortcomings with the car. And Max himself, he wasn't holding back either. After China, he straight up said the car had terrible pace and terrible balance. And that, coming from a 4-time world champion who almost never publicly criticizes his own team, tells you everything. With just 12 points from the first 2 races, this is Red Bull's worst start since 2015. Think about that for a second. They came to Japan with a brand new floor upgrade, their last real hope to turn things around. And in practice, well, FP1, Max was P7, FP2, he was P10, more than a second off the pace, FP3, he managed P8. The upgrade clearly wasn't working the way they hoped. The warning signs were all there, and honestly, we should have seen what was coming. The journalist drama. But before we even get to qualifying, something completely crazy happened in the media session that nobody was expecting. Max walked into the press conference, looked around the room, spotted Guardian journalist Giles Richards sitting there, and just straight up said, "I'm not speaking," before he's leaving. Richards looked at him and said, "Seriously? Because of the question last year?" And Max just replied, "Yep, get out." And the guy actually left. Now look, this is wild on so many levels. The whole thing goes back to Abu Dhabi 2025, where Richards asked Max whether he regretted his collision with George Russell in Spain, a crash that cost Max a 10-second penalty and ultimately the championship by just 2 points. That question clearly never left Max's head. And here's my honest opinion on this. I actually understand why Max was angry. That question was personal, it was painful, and it happened right after one of the most heartbreaking moments of his career. But kicking a journalist out of a press conference? That just looks bad. It gives the media more ammunition against you. And sure enough, Richards wrote about it publicly, other journalists talked about walking out in protest, and within 2 hours, Richards was getting abusive emails from Max's fans. The whole thing became a massive story, and none of it was helping Max's focus heading into qualifying. Nurburgering, the week that started badly. And here's the part that people are sleeping on. Before Japan even started, Max had already had a horrible week.
He raced at the Nurburgering NLS2 event, which he genuinely loves, just a guy having fun outside of F1. He drove brilliantly, took pole, led the race, crossed the line first. And then they disqualified him after the race, just like that. He said after Japan that every time he got out of the car at Nordschleife, he was just smiling because he loves that place. And then they took the result away. So let's be real, Max came into the Japanese GP weekend already carrying that disappointment. Then the journalist drama. Then 3 practice sessions where the car felt terrible. This wasn't just a bad qualifying session. This was the culmination of an entire week going wrong, one piece at a time.
And then came qualifying. Q1 went fine, Max made it through, but Q2 was a different story entirely. As the session wound down, Max needed one more lap, and young Arvid Lindblad from Racing Bulls in the final moments posted a 1:30.109 and knocked Max all the way down to P11. Eliminated. In Q2, in Suzuka, the same circuit where he'd taken pole 4 times in a row. Meanwhile, in Q3, Kimi Antonelli took pole for Mercedes with George Russell in P2, Oscar Piastri P3, and Lando Norris P4. Mercedes and McLaren were completely dominant. Red Bull wasn't even in the conversation. And honestly, this is the result that tells you everything about where Red Bull and Max are right now. It's not just one bad session. This is a pattern, and it's getting worse. Max to Mercedes? Which brings us to the elephant in the room that everyone is talking about. Max is technically contracted to Red Bull until 2028. But, and this is huge, there are performance clauses in that contract. Meaning if Red Bull keeps struggling like this, Max has options. Former F1 driver Jolyon Palmer said it plainly on the F1 Nation podcast. The conversation is going to happen because Red Bull will not win the title this year. Max is not here to finish 8th in qualifying. He's going to be looking at a way to get into that Mercedes. And my opinion? I think Jolyon is right. If this Red Bull car doesn't dramatically improve in the next few races, the talks will happen. Mercedes is dominant right now. Antonelli is on pole in Japan. The timing couldn't be more perfect for Max to consider a move. The question is, will Red Bull fix this car before it's too late?
Final verdict. So guys, to wrap this all up, Max Verstappen had arguably the worst week of his 2026 season right here. A Nurburgring disqualification, a journalist kicked out of a press conference, 3 miserable practice sessions, and then a shocking Q2 elimination at the circuit he used to own. And tomorrow he starts the Japanese Grand Prix from P11 on the grid with a car that simply isn't fast enough. My honest opinion? The Max Verstappen era at Red Bull might be closer to its end than any of us thought 6 months ago. But here's the question I want to leave you with. If Mercedes came calling tomorrow, would you want Max in that silver car? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you guys think. And if you want full race coverage tomorrow, make sure you're subscribed because this Japanese GP, it's going to be something special.